Are we unfair on landlords? Because I didn't plan this. I didn't plan to be a landlord at all. I bought a shared ownership flat in East London. It was supposed to be a stepping stone. Live there, move on, start a family. Then the cladding issue came out. No EWS1 certificate. Overnight, the flat became unsellable. At the same time, my father couldn't manage the stairs in his home. We bought a bungalow for him, and within 6 months, he passed away. So now we had 2 properties, 2 mortgages, and no real choice.
But that's exactly where tenants get lost in this conversation, because whatever the reason a landlord ends up renting out a property, the tenant still pays the price when things go wrong. Tenants are all too often seen as an inconvenient commercial necessity rather than individuals with rights and needs. That was Theresa May, and it still applies. I've seen families living with mold, no heating, unsafe electrics. A mother and her child left without a working toilet for months, while rent was still being collected. So when we talk about pressure, whose pressure are we talking about?
I don't disagree that those situations exist, but that's not all landlords. We've raised the rent once, by £50. That doesn't even cover the increase in our mortgage. We had to switch to a buy-to-let product. It's more expensive. Our costs went up overnight. What looks like a portfolio on paper is actually just us trying to stay afloat.
And both of those realities are true. There are around 2.86 million private landlords in England and Wales. Most of them own between 1 and 3 properties. So we're not just talking about large-scale investors. We're talking about individuals, often exposed to the same economic pressures as everyone else. But the structure of the system is where this becomes complicated. Because housing isn't a typical market, it's an essential need.
Exactly, and that's the problem. When housing is treated like a commodity, the incentives are clear. If you can afford the deposit, the tenant covers the mortgage. And when profit is part of the model, there will always be landlords who cut corners. I've seen temporary accommodation where landlords are receiving nearly £10,000 a month from local authorities, while tenants are living with serious hazards inside those properties. That's not a few bad cases. That's systemic.
But what happens when the numbers don't work anymore? Mortgage rates have surged, inflation has pushed up maintenance costs, tax has increased. We're not talking about huge profits here. Sometimes we're talking about breaking even, or worse.
And that's why the idea that this is still a highly profitable, easy investment doesn't fully hold anymore. Mortgage rates climbed above 6% after recent global shocks. Maintenance costs have risen. Tax changes over the last decade have reduced profitability. In real terms, house prices in some areas, particularly London, have stalled or fallen. So yes, some landlords are leaving the market, but not necessarily because of regulation alone.
But regulation is necessary, because without it, tenants are left exposed. Section 21, no-fault evictions, have now been abolished. Rent increases are limited. Bidding wars are banned, and safety standards will be enforced. That's not punishment, that's basic protection.
But it is more pressure, more compliance, more cost, more risk. And for landlords already trying to do the right thing, it feels like everything is getting harder at once.
But if you are doing the right thing, most of these changes shouldn't be a problem. That's the reality. The reforms are designed to target poor practice, not responsible landlords.
And if someone calls themselves a good landlord, then there shouldn't be any issue with accountability, because there is no space in this sector for people who profit at the expense of safety and dignity.
I agree with that. But I also think the conversation often ignores people like us. We didn't build a property business. We reacted to circumstances. And now we're managing responsibilities we never planned for.
Which brings us back to the question, are we unfair on landlords? Or are we finally confronting a system that has allowed too many people to fall through the cracks?
Because for a long time, tenants have carried the consequences.
And now landlords are starting to feel them too.